Thank you for joining us, Gladden.
Thanks. So nice to be here with you.
Well, this year marks this 75th anniversary of these formal ties between China and Hungary. And of course, we know Chinese President Xi Jinping will pay a state visit to Hungary in very soon, as part of his three-nation European tour, which also includes France and Serbia. So what's the expectation out of this visit?
Well, here in Budapest, we're very much looking forward to President Xi Jinping's visit. This is a symbol, I think, of the strong bilateral ties that have developed between Hungary and China in recent years. And Hungary has been pursuing a strategy that we call connectivity. We are a gateway between East and West. We have a very deep history. Originally, Hungary comes from the Central Asian area, so we have a very deep tie with the East and with China in particular. And this visit by President Xi Jinping to Prime Minister Orbán and also to the Hungarian President Tamás Sujok will cement those good relations. China has become the largest source of foreign direct investment into Hungary in 2023, and Hungary has become the primary destination for Chinese investment into the European Union. There's cooperation through the Belt and Road Initiative and the cooperation between China and Central and Eastern European countries. A lot of other elements of cooperation as well, and all around, this is clearly an important visit. It's important for Budapest. It's a sign that our strategy and approach is very compatible with that of the Chinese investment and development in Europe. And so, alongside Paris, we're the only European Union capital to be a part of this trip, and we're very excited about that. So this visit will provide an opportunity to discuss expanding that cooperation, and I'm sure that a number of new initiatives will be expected to be announced during the visit and after the visit. Of course, we'll have to wait for those details, but I'm sure there's much to come.
Gladden, last year you were in Beijing and Shanghai, the two most important cities in China. Before that, your last visit, that was like 26 years ago. So any changes you find out?
Yeah, I first visited China in 1997, and then the last time, that was the last time until 1 year ago this month, actually. So what I found was an amazing amount of development that I really couldn't imagine. It was very, very impressive to see the beautiful cities and the extraordinary economic development that's going on there. So clearly, this is a wonderful opportunity to build the relationship for me as well between Hungary and China. And I had the opportunity as the president of the foreign policy think tank of Hungary to visit our counterpart institutions in Beijing and Shanghai and to get a sense of the development and excitement in the country. So that's a strong basis. As I said, this is the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations this year. And I think it's a sign of what good global cooperation can look like.
Well, you talked about the foreign policy of Hungary toward other countries, including China. Obviously, the China policy is a successful one. If you look at the investment from the Chinese side, as you mentioned, in the largest. Tell us more about that. We know that in particular, there's one area that attracts a lot of Chinese investment, that is an auto industry, and probably even closer, that is, let's say, electric vehicle, and of course related industries along that that's value chain or supply chain. Tell us more about that. Why Hungary is so attractive to the Chinese investors?
Well, you're exactly right. This is a key area of Hungary's goal of reindustrialization and economic development. The automobile industry is very strong in Hungary. A lot of the German car manufacturers are producing their engines and other automobile parts here. That really depends on the other side, on the input side, on raw materials from the Far East and from China in particular. We've decided to leverage that connection here in Hungary in a number of other ways. So with the green transition and the growth of electric vehicles and battery production, it seemed logical to Hungarian decision makers to expand the cooperation in that area in particular. So there have been a number of announcements in this area all over Hungary, from the eastern part of Hungary in Debrecen, where the CATL battery factory will take shape, to the southern city of Szeged, where BYD selected Hungary as the first European destination for in Europe manufacturing of electric vehicles. So there are a lot of other related areas. Of course, logistics itself, transportation are necessary background elements for this kind of accented and improved economic and business cooperation. So you're right, this is the direction that things are going. At the BRI summit in Beijing last October, Prime Minister Orban and the members of the Hungarian government pointed out Hungary's ambition to become the #2 manufacturer of electric batteries after China, that is. And so this is an area that will be one of continued growth in Hungary in the coming years. And I think what makes Hungary attractive, in addition to its favorable business climate, its favorable investment environment, is really its deep history and experience with this kind of cooperation. So Hungary has a very practical approach in its foreign policy. We want to make partners with as many countries as we can and find mutually productive ways of carrying out that cooperation. So in essence, this is something that Hungary is very skilled at. And with the strong support for the Hungarian government by the Hungarian people, it's also a stable environment where this policy is not going to change. So as there are a lot of shifting winds in the global political environment today, Hungary is committed to this strategy of connectivity and of being a link between East and West.
A link between East and West. You also mentioned about the connectivity. That seems to be a key word in terms of Hungary's foreign policy making there. Of course, Hungary was the first European country to sign up to Belt and Road Initiative from the Chinese side. And it is also one of China's most important trading partners in Central and Eastern Europe. So if you look back about the BRI cooperation here, how had this BRI initiative, or the initiative of, let's say, connectivity, boosted trade and investment between the two countries here?
Well, it's important for listeners and viewers to understand that Central and Eastern Europe has been historically, over the last 100 years, an insufficiently well-connected area. There's been a lot of war, a lot of different empires that are present here, and things got kind of chopped up. So rebuilding those connections and making it as easy as possible to move among the countries in Central and Eastern Europe down into the Western Balkans is extremely important. Without that, not only is the region not well connected, but indeed the globe itself would have a breaking point in that region. So one important BRI project here is the Budapest to Belgrade Railway. I think from what I understand, that's on track to be completed in the next couple of years. Once that's in place, it's not only helpful for regional logistics and for the growth of business between Budapest and Belgrade, but it even supports the green goals of Europe, because with more traffic going along the rail route rather than on the roads, there will also be an environmental improvement.
If you look at this larger picture between China and the European countries or the European continent, I have a few figures here. In the first quarter of this year, there were a total of 4,541 freight trains linking China with Europe, carrying 493,000 containers. If you look at these numbers, that represent a year-on-year increase of 9% and 10% respectively. Of course, people would ask, what does this say about China and Europe trade ties? Given what's happening actually in the Red Sea, disruption of global cargo transportation, for example. So can we say it's important? It is indeed important in terms of connectivity here.
Indeed. Well, the China-Europe freight train service, which is a flagship BRI program, is definitely experiencing a surge in demand amid the Red Sea crisis. And so projects like this are a part of Hungary's connectivity strategy as well. And we think that this is essential not only for Hungary, but for Europe as a whole. It's a Eurasian continent or Eurasian landmass. And it's important that the west and the east portions of it be as connected as possible. In Hungary, there's also the east-west terminal in the east of the country. This is a logistics hub that's capable of processing something like 1 million containers per year. And we're seeing a lot of increased traffic through these areas as the disruptions in other parts of the globe continue. So from my standpoint in Budapest, this is, as I said, something that's important not only for Hungary, but for Europe as a whole and for everyone. So we want all these initiatives to work together and not to conflict. We want there to be a good way of fitting together the logistics and transportation routes and hubs along the most effective and beneficial routes that are available. So all of this aligns with Hungary's connectivity strategy and Hungary's desire to make Europe itself a more resilient and strategically a significant area of the globe.
You once said that, quote, China is not a threat, but an opportunity. There can be shared development in the world. Tell us more about that.
Well, Europe needs to improve its competitiveness and seek to recover its economic growth, and that's stagnated a lot in recent years. What we've been seeing is that even while in some countries there has been a manufacturing decline, that's been continuing to increase in Hungary, and that is due in part due to the activity of investments coming from China that have helped to boost the economy and the manufacturing capabilities here. So that's the main thing. Europe has to be a very open economy. China is the #1 source of imports into Europe. It's Europe's #2 export market. When people start to talk about decoupling and de-risking, they're introducing a dangerous uncertainty into the mix. As our foreign minister, Peter Szijjártó, is fond of saying, the real risk is de-risking, trying to pull the world economy apart rather than to seek to find more effective and mutually beneficial ways of collaborating is dangerous and would lead to an increase in inflation, a further decline in competitiveness, and an increase in geopolitical risk, particularly because of Hungary's location, its history, its sensitivity on these areas, and its good experience of what having an open and connected economy is like. That's why Hungary is taking this stance to advocate for as much connection as possible and for figuring out ways through diplomacy and exchange to resolve differences. Of course, it's natural that there are misperceptions and disagreements and things that have to be worked through. No diplomatic relationship in this world is perfect. There's always something to discuss and work through. But the goal has to be to use that process to increase the connections and not to decrease them. And so that's what we're standing for in Hungary. And we think that the results, which have been, you could say, counter-cyclical here, as there have been declines elsewhere, things are still continuing to improve in Hungary. We think the evidence of that speaks for itself.
Thank you, Gladden. Thank you for speaking with us. With that, we come to the end of today's discussion. Many thanks to our guests. You can also find us on the CGTN app or YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.